Hello there, welcome to this edition of Global Business Africa from the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll be taking you on a journey of all the business stories you need to know about, from Cairo to Johannesburg and of course from Nairobi to Lagos in West Africa. It's 9 p.m. here in the Kenyan capital. Here's what's coming up in the next 30 minutes. East African leaders confer over funding for massive port and interconnecting road project in Kenya. Elsewhere, Africa is seeking a better trade deal at the upcoming US-Africa Leaders Summit. We'll have the details. And we'll be taking the pulse of Kenya's tourism industry as rising insecurity is sucking the lifeblood out of the sector. Now then, East African leaders have met in Nairobi to consider options for funding the massive Lamu Port Southern Sudan Ethiopia Transport Corridor project, better known by the snappy acronym of LAPSET. Now, the 7 different components of this entire project all require something in the region of $24.5 billion to put together. Lamu Port, with its 32 projected berths alone, will cost at least $3 billion. In a statement after the mini-summit, President Uhuru Kenyatta said that the leaders had agreed to seek financing from the African Development Bank's Africa 50 Infrastructure Fund. Those at the meeting included Uganda's head of state, Yoweri Museveni, his Ethiopian counterpart, Haile Mariam Desalegn, and Salva Kiir of South Sudan. LAPSET is an integrated and, on paper at least, a transformative infrastructure project that will provide regional integration and interconnectivity that should generate quite a bit of investment and trade flows for all the countries involved. The leaders at today's event also will consider the upcoming Africa-USA Summit as an avenue to interest American investors in the project. Now, East Africa may be on a spur of port building at the moment, but existing facilities are still quite busy. Here's a quick run through some data coming through this week. Cargo volumes at East Africa's biggest port rose by 12.8% in the first 6 months of the year to 11.9 million tons. Now, part of that growth is directly attributable to the expansion of the port of Mombasa and efforts to simply make operations more efficient. Trucks, for example, spend 42% less time at the port, about 4 days or so. Cargo dwell time is also down over 22% at under 4 days. Now, the volume of goods heading to other East African countries other than Kenya was up 9.6% in the first 6 months. Uganda and Rwanda's cargo volumes went up by double digits in the same time frame. A second $300 million container terminal is being built at the port of Mombasa to expand its cargo handling capacity. And there are plans, as we mentioned earlier, to build an entirely new port in Lamu. Now, still on transport matters, but related to one of the big stories of the day, Ethiopian Airlines says it is thoroughly inspecting traffic on all flights to and from West Africa following an outbreak of Ebola in the region. Some 700 people have succumbed to the disease so far. Airline officials say the airline has no plans whatsoever of cancelling flights to and from West African destinations. Kenya, through its National Disaster Operations Centre, has also announced that health workers are on standby with enhanced screening at border points to prevent and contain any possible Ebola cases in East Africa. Now, fears of Ebola spreading have grown in tandem with a number of fatalities, prompting carriers like A-Sky and Arik Air to cancel flights to some West African destinations.
West Africa is Ethiopian Airlines' biggest destination. Both passenger and freight services have been very profitable for a long period of time. And despite the killer Ebola virus ravaging the region, Ethiopia's flag carrier says at present it does not have plans of cancelling flights to countries like Nigeria and Togo. But the airline said it's now implementing precautionary measures to prevent possible exposure of the virus to a passenger or staff. The statement from the airline said, though Ebola has not been declared an epidemic and no travel ban has been issued, Ethiopia has taken the lead in taking extraordinary precautions in connection with the outbreak of the disease in some parts of West Africa. Ethiopian Airlines further said, even though the chance of being infected while on board are negligible, the company has already implemented the extraordinary measures to ensure to the maximum extent the safety of its customers and staff. That includes creating awareness both on ground and on board frontline staff on the mode of disease transmission and how to avoid coming into contact with bodily fluids while on duty. Officials said at the moment, the Ethiopian Airlines is practicing stringent and specific surveillance regarding all flights from West Africa at Addis Ababa Airport. Grumjala, CCTV, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Now, speaking of East Africa, the East African Community, that economic bloc, is confident that it will sign a new economic partnership agreement with the EU ahead of the October 1st deadline. The Kenyan Principal Secretary and Chief Negotiator for the bloc at the talks, Karanja Kibicho, says that compromise wordings and contentious clauses have been arrived at, and East African negotiators are confident they will get a positive response. Among other contentious matters, the East African Community disputes a proposal requiring them member countries to seek authorization from Europe before imposing duties and export taxes, and also they're insisting on locking out subsidized European goods in order to protect their own agricultural industry.
We have negotiated this and agreed, while it is important to operate in a very transparent economic partnership, the EAC partner states have agreed to notify the EU whenever there is a need to introduce new taxes, say what the taxes are, and we are ready to have that reviewed every 48 months. So our point of divergence with the EU is their need for us to seek authorization, and ours, we insist that the decision to impose export taxes on strategic areas are sovereign decisions, and we are agreeing to notifying the EU before imposition of such taxes, and also we are agreeing that those decisions can be examined after the first 48 months to see whether the original reasons still justify extension of imposition of these taxes. And I think that small area is where we have divergence, and we are certain the language that we have proposed is language now that will be acceptable to the EU.
Now, while the continent's attention will be focused on the US-Africa summit next week, a meeting prior to that summit will discuss the future of the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, better known more commonly as AGOA. Now, AGOA essentially provides preferential market access to the US for several African countries based on a particular set of criteria, and it's up for renewal by the US Congress in 2015, and that has some African countries quite concerned. Take South Africa, for example. It might be Africa's second largest economy, but it still wants to retain its most favored nation status. CCTV's Angelo Coppola now reports.
AGOA has led to total US trade with sub-Saharan Africa increasing by 250% since 2001, while exports from this economic region to the US have increased by 325%. Total combined trade between the US and South Africa was $8 billion in 2009. It climbed to $13 billion in 2013.
This relationship has been underpinned by AGOA, and that therefore this is an arrangement which isn't broke and doesn't need fixing. It needs to be continued and extended.
AGOA provides preferential access to the US market for more than 7,000 products. It is estimated that South Africa has benefited in excess of 200 billion rand, and it is also estimated that more than 150,000 jobs have benefited from this access to the US markets.
While the relationship is a solid one, there's some concern that South Africa is not seen as a developing country in terms of AGOA. Some see it as a middle-income country. Davies disputes this.
We have an economy which is actually characterized by high levels of unemployment, high levels of poverty, high levels of inequality. But if there were to be an argument based on we are supposedly stronger, any conceivable alternative arrangement would probably also involve at least one least developed country and a number of small vulnerable economies that would also be included in the same arrangement.
There is an issue that many US investors will want clarity on, especially those potential investors. It's labor volatility. Davies was quick to dispute this though.
I should say that mostly in the manufacturing space, at least where we are involved and where we look at value-added activities. I have not seen a single investor that has said because there is a labour situation in South Africa we're withdrawing. That has not happened. In fact, the pipeline has been increasing.
While incoming investment deals valued at around $6 billion are being pursued, SACCI are concerned that if labour stability doesn't prevail, those deals might be at risk.
The world is going to lose patience with us if we don't get our house in order. The world is going to lose patience with us if we don't focus on the issues that command competitiveness from the South African economy.
There are 600 US businesses operating in one way or another in South Africa, mostly due to the Africa Growth and Opportunities Act. South Africa will be making a strong case for the Obama administration to extend the Act by at least another 15 years to attract more potential investors. I'm Angelo Coppola for CCTV in Johannesburg.
Let's make a quick run through the equity market. We're smack in the middle of half-year reporting season, so some interesting numbers are coming through. There's one set we'd like you to look at, what we're going to be talking about in the next part of the program. TPSNO releasing its half-year numbers today. 7% drop in revenue, 71% decline in first-half pre-tax profits, 31% drop in earnings. We'll be telling you why that happened and what happens next when we come back. Here's what else is coming up. Industrialists in Zimbabwe are meeting. They're looking at ways of reviving the sector. And we'll be taking a pulse of Kenya's tourism industry as rising insecurity is simply threatening its very existence. Africa is on the move. It's home to 7 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies.
From small businesses to large-scale enterprises, hear directly from entrepreneurs behind the story. It's about putting you in the picture so you know where Africa fits in the global context.
Global Business, weekdays at this time on CCTV Africa.
African leaders have been urged to make it easier to move and do business across borders within the African continent.
Africans should be free to move in their continent, to do business, to interact, if we are to grow the levels of investment and trade that will ensure that we are able to create the jobs for our people that we require.
Welcome back to the program. You're watching Global Business Africa. Now, Zimbabwe's biggest manufacturing sector body is holding its annual conference in the country's eastern border city of Mutare. This comes at a time when the manufacturing sector in Zimbabwe is operating at just 30% of its entire capacity. Now, the theme for the conference is taking Zimbabwe's industry to the next level. The thing is, it's not clear if the private sector can achieve that alone if the government doesn't have the will to enable it.
The manufacturing sector has been likened to a patient in the intensive care unit. Companies are closing down. Those that are still operating are in desperate need of new equipment and machinery. And the economy as a whole is struggling due to a cash shortage. Authorities here are starting to blame the US dollar for the woes the economy is facing.
The more important thing is that we cannot do it alone. It's a question of partnership with other players, such as government in particular, because they have to provide the leadership. But we have to putting ideas on the table. To be honest, some of the points we have put on the table have been taken up, perhaps not as dramatically as we would like, and perhaps not in the order of priority that we would like. But we remain hopeful.
What is evident is, despite the brave face that participants here are putting up, as they typically do, urgent measures are needed to remedy the situation, or else this patient already in ICU could be breathing their last breath. Farai Mwakutuya, CCTV, Mutare, Zimbabwe.
We still are in Zimbabwe. The country's telecom giant Econet has launched an international debit card along with MasterCard as part of efforts to cut its clients' reliance on banknotes in a cash-strapped economy. Now, Econet says it will issue around 3 or so million debit cards in the next 5 years. That should cover roughly a quarter of Zimbabwe's entire population. The EcoCash mobile companion debit card is linked to Econet's mobile money service. It's also expected to deepen financial inclusion in a country where most people have no formal jobs. Now, the card aims to reduce cash use in Zimbabwe, which dropped its own currency about 5 years ago as part of efforts to stabilize the economy and tame fairly crippling hyperinflation. However, the switch to a multi-currency system has created new headaches, the least of which, frankly, is a lack of small change. Now, what's the real state of Kenya's tourism sector? That question has been prompted by two separate events this week. For starters, the state-run Kenya Tourism Board argued that international visitor arrivals are down only 5%, down rather 4% in the first 5 months of the year to about 381,000. That, however, was met with derision from one of the country's leading hotel chains, the Serena Hotels. Its marketing manager argued that KTB's data is, quote, out of touch with reality, end of quote. Today, that hotel chain released first half results that pointed to a 7% drop in revenues, a 71% decline in first half pre-tax profits, and a 31% drop in earnings. Over 100 people have died so far in a wave of attacks along Kenya's coast since June. Now, whatever the real numbers are, the fact is Kenya's tourism sector and the players in it are bleeding money. In What's Hot Tonight, we're doing things a little bit differently. We're trying to take an in-depth look at the tourism sector to help us understand and navigate that jungle. Duncan Muriuki is here with us. He's the Managing Director of Destination Africa. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
What are occupancy rates like in Mombasa, Malindi, Lamu? Give us a sense of what things are like down there.
I wish we could give a better picture, but this is supposed to be the high season. This is the holiday season. But any hotel doing more than 30% will count itself lucky. On average, it's 30% occupancy unless you have a conference once in a while. But that is basically what's happening at the coast. 30% is very dismal.
30% is if you're lucky.
If you're lucky, 30%. Any deal you want to cut now, you know, it's very challenging. Yes.
But, I mean, looking at the numbers that Serena's put out today, I mean, these are really, really dismal numbers. Revenues down 7%, profit before tax down 71%, and they're a big, big player. So if they're hit to this extent, how are smaller guys surviving?
Yeah, it's good you're saying that because Serena is basically the flagship of the tourism industry. So if Serena is actually feeling the pinch, that shows that everyone is feeling the pinch because Serena basically is a pace setter in this industry. Once you see a flagship doing that, the rest are actually struggling. It's just that sometimes people do not come up, but because it's a listed company, they are required to say so. The private companies suffer in silence. The smaller ones are even doing more. They're doing even worse because they do not have the cushion that Serena has.
Yeah, because Serena is essentially diversified across East Africa.
It's got money invested and it's diversified. You know, they've got quite a wide base. But the smaller companies, the medium ones, are even worse because they do not have that cushion. They do not have the marketing reach that Serena has. So the tourism industry is having serious challenges, and this is a real challenge ever since. You know, we started having challenges way back in 1997. Yeah. But this one we are having now is like the real challenge, the biggest of the challenge, because it's actually it's touching on security.
So would you say this is the worst in living memory that the worst crisis in living memory?
No doubt, this is the worst. We thought the Iraq War was the worst. We thought the 9/11 was the worst, but this one, especially when we're getting travel advisories left, right, and center, and then we're having our own even local people starting to question because of security issues. Yeah, this is the worst, and it's got to be addressed in a very different way.
Let's talk about those travel advisories from a business perspective. Now that the UK put in these travel advisories a couple of months ago, it essentially means that some of their travel operators can't bring visitors here. Getting travel insurance is also a big problem. But I understand some local players are putting together a local insurance product for UK visitors coming in here.
Yes, and I think it's about time. You know, Kenya, we've been squeezed. Now what has happened is that the local players have said we're going to come up with a homegrown solution. Because what travel advisories do, for one, they deny even that tourists that want to come a chance to come. Because I may want to come to Kenya, but I've been told do not go, which means I cannot have a travel insurance that covers me. Now, even if I wanted to go, I need to cushion myself. So the local players, and thanks to Mohammed Hessi, the MCTA is the one who has come up with this, is that there'll be an insurance that will cover what the US or the UK insurance companies do not offer. That means if you come here and you have an issue, you'll be covered. Now that has been, it's out of necessity that has come up. And that is one of the best things. I wish it came up a long time ago, because it will encourage those that want to come to continue coming. And that is the way to go.
But who's the underwriter for this particular product? What sort of rates are we looking at in terms of premiums? I
am sure by Monday you will be getting the facts. I don't want to jump the gun, because that by Monday it should be unveiled. And it's going to be a very simplified way of going about it. But because it's yet to be launched, that's going to be formally done on Monday. It's going to be a very simple way of going about it. Anyone, even if you're sitting in a little kiosk or little house in back of London, you can be able to do that. But travel advisory, basically, there's economic sabotage measures by countries that it's not necessarily about security. Because why is it that it's only the UK residents that are so insecure in Kenya? That is why we are saying, fine, if the government of the UK is saying do not come to Kenya, and the clients, the tourists want to come, we shall make them come.
Right, let's move on to something else that happened in May.
Yes.
The government announced a series of measures trying to plug the gap, as it were, left by all these foreign visitors by boosting domestic tourism as well. A variety of tax breaks, for example, announced for holidays that are sponsored and paid for by companies. About 2 months have passed since those measures were announced. Are they actually working?
Maybe it might be too soon, because first and foremost, to send people on holiday, you have to plan. So, in a nutshell, the effect has not been felt. Why? Because it's only 2 months. Because the companies have to plan. If you're going to send people on holiday, you're not just going to tell them next month go on holiday. So I expect that the results are going to be seen over a period of time because of the company planning. Because the company has nothing to lose. They are basically spending money that was supposed to go to government. If I had all the money that was supposed to go to the tax, I would rather say some of it I give to my employees in terms of incentives to travel, maybe the best performing employees. So I expect to see results, because it's a win-win for everyone. The companies will basically use that to incentivize their hardworking employees. They will not have done that within a month, within 2 months. So it's too soon to actually see the results, because the results, if we had seen tangible results, then we'll be having occupancies much higher. That's yet to be felt.
All right. Unfortunately, we have to leave it there, Mr. Maruki. We're running out of time, but thank you very much for your time this evening. Right, so let's get a quick run through the commodity prices here for you, see exactly what's been going on. The hunt for more platinum assets still continues. Sibanye Gold is still very much in the running to buy up quite a few undervalued, depending on your perspective, platinum assets. But as far as commodity prices are concerned, not much movement over there except for coffee. Fairly interesting jump there, up over 5 percentage points so far today. To stay on global business, when we come back, we'll be giving you a glimpse into the growing footwear industry in Ethiopia. All that and more is coming up next. Brilliant.
BizAsia. Asia means business.
Welcome back to the program at 1824 GMT. You're still on Global Business Africa. Now, a cooperative in Ethiopia is helping small-scale shoemakers to improve their business by upgrading their skills and the marketing and their products as well. Started in 2005, the Ethiopian International Footwear Cluster Cooperative has over 1,000 members. Tonight on Grassroots, we focus on this particular cooperative, which can currently manufacture up to 12,000 pairs of shoes a day, and it's now looking at bigger markets.
Most of these shoemakers are members of the Ethiopia International Footwear Cluster Cooperative Society, a local organization that brings together entrepreneurs and other players in the shoe manufacturing industry. The Horn of Africa nation has a long shoe manufacturing history, but many are still small-scale traders who often lack funds to develop their business. Once someone joins the society, they are enrolled in a training course where they learn core skills in shoemaking.
By joining the cooperative, the advantages I got are quite big. First and foremost, I have a clean and wide working space. We used to work near the toilets and in people's kitchens when we were in the slums. But this space has a big impact on our productivity and motivation.
The cooperative has been in existence since 2005. Paulos Endeshau is the organization's founder and CEO. He started the business with a group of friends when he noticed how difficult it can be for local traders to market their products.
What we have is all the value chain actors are inside IFCOS. It starts from designing to retailing shops. So we coordinate all these people. Somebody is specializing on that particular specialization.
Members can connect or work with other designers or leather suppliers within the same compound. They can also participate in the planning process, which members say helps improve efficiency.
The main advantage of working in this cooperative, in my opinion, is the ability to share information and exchange ideas. The shoe industry, by its very nature, needs discussion on many fronts. The interaction you have with the marketers or the customers will help you in improving your productivity. That's the main benefit you get by working together.
The cooperative produces up to 12,500 pairs of shoes every day and has started its first local retail store in the capital, Addis Ababa.
The shoe industry here is improving by the day. You can easily find very good quality shoes. Now, I'm buying shoes for suits, and I can see that they're not of a lower standard than those imported from abroad. What I'm seeing is a really big improvement.
The International Footwear Cluster Cooperative Society mainly exports shoes to countries within East and Central Africa. However, it plans to expand into a bigger international market in the future. The cooperative also intends to open 100 retail shops in Ethiopia by 2018. Mahia Mutwa, CCTV.
I hope you have enough space in your closet for some 12,000 shoes. But a quick run through the currency markets here for you. The Naira and the East African currencies, the Kenyan shilling, the Ugandan shilling and so on, they're broadly expected to strengthen in the days ahead. We'll keep tabs on all these numbers and plenty more for you. But that's pretty much it for this edition of Global Business on the day when the full tally of those who've been killed by Ebola went past the 700 mark. Do send your feedback to globalbusinessafrica@cctv.com, and wherever it is you are on social media, Facebook, Twitter, you name it, we're there. We'll keep you updated on everything that's going on across Africa right here on CCTV. Thanks for watching. I'm Ramanya.